How do you become self-sufficient? Today we're going to look at it. G'day there, it's Dana here from Piwakaka Valley Homestead. Today we're going to look at different ways that you can start becoming self-sufficient at your place. In this time of turmoil and unknown that's happening at the moment around the world, learning to become more self-sufficient is on more and more people's minds. And I would just like to share some different ideas today of some different ways that you can start becoming more self-sufficient wherever you happen to be living. Self-sufficiency just means to be more self-reliant, I suppose, to be able to supply more of your own needs and to rely less on commercial things and rely less on things that are mass-produced and rely less on things that cost money. For us, the ultimate goal of self-sufficiency was to have some real food security for ourselves and for our family. One of the first things that you need to consider when you're thinking about becoming more self-sufficient is really, what are your goals? Are your goals just to save money? Are your goals to eat more organically? Do you want to move onto a big plot of land somewhere? Do you want to learn to grow your own garden? Do you want to grow your own meat? There's a whole lot of things that you really need to have a wee bit of think about what goals you really have. For us, it was all about food security. We wanted a garden, we wanted our own meat, we wanted chickens and our own dairy, so we got goats. And for us, it was being able to live completely separate from the city if we needed to. Learning to grow a garden is probably the biggest thing that I have done in our steps towards becoming more self-sufficient. Our vegetable garden now feeds our family probably 9 months out of the 12, and I have learnt so much, and it's brilliant being able to share that with the children. They also are learning all those skills. We're teaching them how to save seeds and how to grow their own food and all those sorts of things. And now we know that that's one thing that, if things really go to pot, that we can actually use our own food and we can eat our own vegetables. I think the next step in becoming more self-sufficient is to get yourself some chickens. I know that not everyone can have chickens, but you'll be surprised at how small an area you can keep chickens in. And they are really low cost, they're really low maintenance, and they will give you a free source of eggs, especially if you look at my previous video on different ways that you can feed chickens for cheap or for free. And they can also be a source of meat if that's what you prefer, if that's what you choose to do with them. This is Dumbledore, our rooster. He's a light Sussex, and they make a really good dual purpose bird. The roosters are quite big and make great meat, and the girls are really good layers. They're kind of the perfect homestead bird, really. Learn to preserve your own food as well. That's probably something that I have learnt to do a little bit later. Learning to grow it first, and then when I had too much of it, then that's when I started learning how to preserve it. Preserving fruit is really, really easy, especially if you don't mind adding a bit of sugar to it. There are ways, of course, to preserve it using a pressure canner. That means you don't have to use sugar. The pressure canner honestly has been a bit of a life changer for us. Now I can a whole lot of vegetables, I can meat stock, I can soup, a whole lot of stuff. So if you want to get yourself a pressure canner, they are relatively, well, they're an investment, right? But there's something for us, for food security is really important to us, and so it's meant that we're able to stock our own pantry with huge amounts of homemade, really nutrient dense foods that we know are gonna last really well. Learning to cook from scratch is one of those things that you can learn to do even if you haven't really started on your own self-sufficiency journey yet. Get yourself some good cookbooks. There are a lot of easy recipes online these days, and there's really no excuse for not learning to cook from scratch. Cooking from scratch also means that you can learn to use the vegetables and things that you are growing in your own backyard, and it means that you will be less reliant on the supermarket should anything happen. Growing your own meat source is a really good way of becoming a bit more self-sufficient. There are some things you can do that will grow really quickly. If you want to get commercial meat chickens, you can buy them and keep them in a chicken tractor and put them around your lawn, and that way you know you're getting fresh pasture raised chicken. They're ready in 6 to 8 weeks. They grow really, really quickly. If you want a more sustainable source, something like meat rabbits are a brilliant idea. They breed really rapidly, they grow really fast, and as long as you get yourself some really great foundation stock, they are pretty low maintenance. This is where we did used to raise meat rabbits. We don't have them at the moment because I couldn't process them while I was heavily pregnant, so we moved them on. So at the moment this is where my children's lop-eared bunnies are living. But we choose to colony raise our rabbits, so we have a big shed that they hang out in, and down behind that netting wall down there is our buck. And this is their nesting boxes. Aren't they cute wee things? This is Cassie. She's our farm cat. She's a brilliant hunter. She catches mice like you wouldn't believe. If you have a bit more land, you may like to raise dairy goats or meat goats or even some ducks. I wouldn't recommend ducks necessarily in a city environment because they're quite messy. They're definitely a lot messier than chickens. And you can actually get quite small goats. This is Holly, she's our Sanian, she's huge. But you can get quite small goats, like Nigerian dwarf goats, that you can actually keep in a city lot quite happily. They probably come up to about Holly's belly height. They're quite a bit smaller, but they do have a massive milk production. These goats, despite having about 10 acres of long grass and scrub that they could be eating, they told me they were starving, so I've given them some grain. Quail are another option for some easy meat on the homestead, especially if you want to stay in the city. Quail and rabbits are great things that you can just keep in small, easy to manage volumes. They breed quite rapidly and grow really quickly. They're a really good way of supplementing the supermarket meat or hunted meat, and you know that you've got, if worse comes to worse, you've got some meat that you can use yourself. Learning to eat seasonally with fresh produce is really one of the best things you can do on your self-sufficiency journey. Buy from your local farmer's market, buy food that is fresh, buy food that is seasonal, and learning to cook with these things is one of the best things you can do. This also means you're getting your food for cheaper because it's in season, you're not wasting money on yucky food that's out of season but is being forced to ripen, and also it's a really good way of getting some really good bargains for preserving some of your food. Reducing your reliance on the grid is also another great way of becoming more self-reliant. For us, we are looking at getting solar. Unfortunately, it's still relatively expensive and we don't have the source of a river or anything to be able to put in hydro. We do, however, we have swapped our lights out for LEDs and we are really conscious of the amount of power that we do consume. You can even install a kill switch that will turn off anything that you don't need while you're away. We heat our house with a wood stove and we also use it to cook during the winter. It means we've got a source of heating and cooking as well as a way of heating our hot water if the grid goes out. These are the radiators we use to heat the house. We harvest rainwater off our roof, so no matter what happens we've always got a fresh supply of water. Even if you just do it off a shed or do it into a smaller tank to water your garden, it all helps. We line dry all our washing, and if it's not a nice day we have an air dryer rack inside. The other two tips I have for becoming more self-sufficient are more interpersonal sort of things. One is learning new, more useful hobbies. Take up things like fishing and hunting, or even more homecraft sort of things like sewing, DIY, mechanics even, fixing your own things, all of those sorts of hobbies. Some people pay money to do them, but actually sometimes they're actually worth the investment. It might cost you a fair amount of money to get yourself set up with a gun and a gun license, but the amount of free food that you can get from it may well be quite worth the time and effort that you put into it. And the other thing is bartering. Learning to barter again. If you've got a whole lot of extra eggs or a whole lot of extra vegetables, what can you swap it with other people that you know that will save you money, and it It keeps the resources within the community and helps build that community spirit. The reality is, it's not self-reliance that we're heading for, it's community reliance, to be able to look after ourselves, our family and each other, as well as our neighbourhood, and to keep us all fed and safe. I hope you found this video really useful. If you have, hit the like button, and if you subscribe to our channel, we bring you videos twice a week on growing and preserving your own food and becoming more self-reliant. We'll see you in the next one.